Community Chronicles Radio, brought to you weekly by Gannon University's Erie Technology Incubator, in partnership with the Corey Higher Education Council. The Erie Technology Incubator, located at 900 State Street, works in the entrepreneurial ecosystem and provides technical assistance through the entrepreneurial process. This show features members of this ecosystem and the entrepreneurs in the Erie area. Welcome to Community Chronicles Radio. If you have a question for us or any of the guests on the show today, give us a call, 814-679-1080. I am Dr. Matthew Plotz, and today I'm so happy to share with you that we are joined by our courageous co-host, Steph Screws. Hello, Steph. How are you?
Good morning. I'm feeling really well. How are you doing?
Really great. I'm so proud of you, and I know our listeners were sick of hearing my voice every week without you to ask the important questions of the entrepreneur.
I'm sure that's not true.
We are so very happy that you're back and in good spirits and ready to continue
I'm happy
on.
to be back. Yes, very happy to be back.
So our first guest today is joining us by Zoom. Is a return guest to the program, but in a different capacity this time because of our sponsorship with the Erie Technology Incubator. Welcome back to the show, Karen Thomas, owner of Pineapple Eddie Southern Bistro and partner of 8 Franz LLC. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yes, welcome, Karen. Sorry, we got all the voices going at once there. And to start off, for the listeners who were not tuned in during your first appearance, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, so I am owner partner of Pineapple Eddie Southern Bistro here in Erie, Pennsylvania. I have been here in Erie. I'm not originally from here, but I've been here probably for about 30 years now. We've operated the restaurant for about half of that amount of time. I would say about 14 years. We took a few pivots during the pandemic to try to get some other endeavors started in the process of, trying to grow our business. I am a mom of 3. They are all young men now, and a wife of a really amazing husband.
That's great. What has been the most challenging of owning the restaurant and the bottle sauce company for you?
I would have to say, if you're asking about most recently, it would really have to be, the people's concern about economic climate. That's always something that triggers the activity of, things like restaurants, people going out to eat, and the things that they do that may be considered discretionary. So those things are often things that affect people that are in my line of work, because they wouldn't be considered necessary at first. So that's probably been the most recent challenge that we've experienced being in this business.
So what advice would you give yourself if you say you had to start all over again?
Well, I would have to say patience and faith, not only in yourself, but in something greater than yourself. Things like this, endeavors like this, they take time and an incredible amount of courage and definitely faith. I mean, you have to be confident enough to know that, knowing what you know, but even smart enough to, when you don't know something, to find out where you can find out that information.
So what surprised you as more difficult than you imagined in your small business journey? It's a good question, right?
That is a very good question. There's so many things happening, in the restaurant world. I mean, you're from constantly trying to keep up with changing trends to understanding, what it is that the customer is interested in, trying to maintain quality, trying to stay on top of the cost of things. So, all these things are incredibly challenging, but I would have to probably say maintaining the same kind of a revenue stream, knowing that your costs are fluctuating.
Okay. So how has Erie assisted you in your business growth, and how can Erie help you more in the future, do you think?
I would have to say is again somebody who is not originally from here. I'm actually originally from New York City. I would say that this has been by far the best place to have an entrepreneurial experience. There may be a lot of people that are from here that may not look at it that way, but if first of all, if it's something that you want to do, sometimes these things don't often present like in your face. If you obviously want to do something, you're seeking it out or you're trying to find ways to make it happen. But Erie is a very interesting place because of the opportunity for visibility and most importantly, the opportunity that you have to engage with organizations that can actually help you get what you need done. I've found it incredible that there's a SBDC and ETI has been incredibly helpful to us actually getting started. There are all kinds of entrepreneurial organizations here that have interests in boosting this kind of activity.
Hey, Steph, we're gonna transition a question from Kathy as Karen mentions ETI. We felt like this was a great time for you to weigh in.
Well, thank you. So good morning, Karen. And going back to kind of the line of questioning that Steph was doing just a second ago, when you look back to when you started, and I know you had, you and I have talked, we've known each other for a long time. So I've heard some of the stories and I know how tough it was for you to kind of start, where you're at today. Is there any advice that you would give yourself that you wish you knew way back when you started this journey?
we had this question.
Yes, there could be a lot of things there.
I want to build on the question once I know Steph asked that, but
it wasn't quite the answer.
Okay.
I was looking for.
Right. There's okay.
Yeah, so what would I do?
What would you tell yourself? Well, or what piece of advice?
What piece of advice would I tell myself? I don't know. That's a tough one. I've had a lot of experiences in this 14 years. And I'm that's a tough one. I really have to think. I need a few seconds more to think on that one because
like, was there like an organization that you wish you knew back when you started?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Super helpful.
Absolutely. Okay. So thank you. So when we got started, I had been writing this on paper for a while before it actually materialized. But at that point in time, I did not know about like ETI, and I had not ventured out into looking for any organization that could help get us jump started. So we literally pooled our funds together and started smaller by piggybacking in a space that did not have a kitchen. If I had it to do all over again, I certainly would have reached out to some of these entities. Again, I had, at the time that we got started, I had already had 25 years of hospitality experience, and I was coming out of being a stay-at-home mom. I just literally hit the ground running. Sure, probably a lot of little hiccups that we had along the way that probably could have been avoided if I had access to, being able to be involved in some of these organizations for sure. So yes.
I know when I talk to people, I was very involved in the restaurant space for a while, just, working through COVID and the things that come up. And maybe you can speak to this, Karen, about, there are so many outside pressures in the hospitality space that I think some new entrepreneurs might not understand. They think they have a great idea for a restaurant, and they look at it and, okay, you're going to buy this space, but there's so many outside pressures and things that can happen. COVID coming along and indoor dining, and then you had to separate tables, and being in the restaurant industry, that if you don't have the number of tables to turn over during a shift, you're not going to be able to meet your margins. And restaurants start with a very thin margin to begin with. And then we have the inflation that's come in, and the cost of food in general, and what that looks like. And maybe speak to the idea of, those folks out there that might think about starting a restaurant at this point, and some of the challenges that they might encounter as they go along.
Yes. So first thing I will tell you is that you need to love what you do. I mean, everybody's mother or grandmother or somebody has a great recipe idea,
right,
or they cook really well at home, but cooking at home doesn't translate into the commercial space like you think it does. And there are so many other details that you have to consider when you start doing this. And I'll tell you, everything from licensing to certifications to right down to the atmosphere. Like, I had no idea. Like, we had this collection of jazz CDs that my dad owned before he passed away. We were able to collect them all, and we started playing them in the restaurant. And we own the music because, the CDs are yours. But that's not exactly how it's looked at when you're playing music in the public sphere. There are fees that you have to pay for playing music in public spaces. And so this is something that I did not know and was not aware of until I started this. And it's based on the number of seats that you have. So there are all kind of little nuances about the restaurant industry that you don't know until you actually get into it. I will say that, it can be something that can be all consuming because you have to prep before you open. Then you have to, of course, open and let the restaurant day run its course. And then there's closing. And so you're working during most of the day.
Not 8 hours.
You have to learn how to set parameters for life. I mean, some people do it because they're chasing a dollar, but if you're in this business, you got to love what you're doing, because depending on what hours you're going to set for your establishment, you could theoretically be giving yourself, away to your business. I mean, there is no other life you can possibly have unless you set some parameters for like livability for yourself, which is why when we started this, we're running 4 days a week, because, if we run every day, we will not love this anymore. That's why a lot of people get burnt out. It's very consuming. I mean, and you're working during the times that people are actually out enjoying themselves and not really able to not only enjoy yourself, but you're not really able to go out and garner any level or measure of inspiration for the work that you do, because you spend most of the time consumed by your own. So it really is very important that you understand that if you're going to go into this business, that you should establish some measure or level of quality of life for yourself, because if you don't, you won't have one.
That is a great answer. And I remember I was a line cook at a local restaurant, Lori's Wild Ridge. And I remember several years ago when Lori decided that, we're closing on Sundays. And at the time I thought, man, Sunday is our busiest day. The after church crowd came in, and we were busy from breakfast right on through. And I thought, why would she do that? And you're speaking to that, I think, is that, Sundays are important to a lot of people. And I think she made a quality of life decision to say, we don't need to make that money. I would much rather take that day and come back at it on Tuesday. We were closed Monday as well, but that's interesting.
You don't really appreciate or understand that you can't pay enough for time, and you can't get it back once it passes. And so I love her because she was the only other establishment that we saw, because we also have established a week off in the summer. We close. I mean, when we first started doing that, people got all flipped out like, oh my God, I can't believe you're closed. Why are you closed? Or we can't figure out what your hours are. I was like, they've been the same since we opened. You know, you can get sucked into what everybody else wants for themselves, but not what you want for yourself. So you can keep doing this and being as good at it, you know, with who you are and what they know you to be. But yeah, I love her because I live not too far from where her location is, and I see her little banner across the front, closed for vacation. I'm like, yes.
And honestly, she communicated with us as employees, like, you need to plan for your week off, save some money. You know, if you're living, you know, people that work in restaurants don't always get paid as much as they should. But she let us know way ahead of time that you know, there's going to be a week where you're not paid, so be ready for that.
Right. So, yeah, and you know, it's great that she's allowed. You set it up that way, but more importantly, you know, the staff as well as the person running the restaurant doesn't have the luxury of having time off either, or even trying to plan for it. And so, the fact that you have an establishment that does that puts people in a different mindset about, you know, how to rejuvenate and take care of themselves.
Karen, this is Brad. You bring up a really good point. I'm going to put the spotlight on you a little bit here because you have been so smart with some of the philosophies you're sharing today. I've had a unique insight being at ETI that you have started a second business called Eight Franz, and that's a natural sauce business. But more than that, you have grown even further based on all the hard work and planning you've done over the years. Can you talk about your new venture?
Yes. So I am looking to and in the process of positioning myself to leave Pineapple Eddie's Southern Bistro. I'm leaving that to the management and ownership of my sister, who is my partner, and her husband. And I am going to start a new project in the same neighborhood, the West Bayfront neighborhood. For anybody listening that is aware of the old Pie in the Sky building on the corner of West 8th and Walnut, I'm going to be starting a project there. It will also be a restaurant. It will also have the same kind of schedule. and it will be, I will be going daylight. I'm going to do breakfast and lunch. And there is another component that I'm adding to it. There is a built-in storefront on the Walnut Street side of that building that I have opted to leave that way. And I am going to start a fresh market because there's no fresh food access in that neighborhood, which is something that in a survey that was done by our West Bayfront organization, the neighbors that were surveyed were very concerned about. And that was one of the things that they would like to see in the neighborhood.
Wow, that's exciting. Can you give me a sense of when you're going to be starting that project and when you'll be cutting the yellow ribbon?
Well, I'm working on getting, we're working on, actually, I have a meeting today, working on getting contractors lined up to get that process started. So I am hoping, if I get lucky enough to get a contractor that's really motivated in finishing stuff so he can move on to another project, I'm hoping that by this time next year that it's up and operating.
Wow, that's exciting.
Can't wait for the quiche.
That is exciting. I really like the idea that you're addressing some of the food desert situation here in Erie. So many people have no idea. Whoop, we're getting a little feedback. But people have no idea that, you know, our city has some sprawl, and people are forced now to drive to locations where there's food. Not everybody has that kind of access. So that's very exciting that you're addressing part of that. So you mentioned our West Bayfront, and one of the questions I have on here, sorry, Steph.
You're fine. Go ahead.
Can you talk a little bit about your involvement in the community, how you work with our West Bayfront, and you know, just your involvement otherwise?
Yes, so I am part of the advisory committee for our West Bayfront. And I had been working with them since we started the restaurant, or a little after we started the restaurant, which is also located in the Bayfront. It's the western, and on the westernmost end of the neighborhood. But I am absolutely excited about that fact that that organization actually exists. Again, as I said, that I'm originally from New York City, and I remember when we first moved the restaurant from the lounge that we were piggybacking on the corner of French and East 10th, which is now Cloud Nine. There was another lounge that was in there. That's where we got started. When we moved out of there, a lot of people told us that we would not survive embedded in the neighborhood, and I didn't bother disagreeing with them, because I'm from a city that has thrived with businesses that have lived in neighborhoods and done just fine. So the ability to be able to understand what their mindset is and how they are so active with trying to get, for instance, that West A Street corridor revitalized is really, I think it's really amazing, and I think it's really exciting. The All the activity and the improvements that are going on State Street, that's great also, but it's not going to be as sustainable if you don't have the neighborhoods that are butted up against that also able to support the changes that are the improvements that are going on. And I think that our West Bayfront has been really good at trying to get this whole thing started. You have the West A Street corridor trying to be revitalized, as well as the work that Hagen is doing on 6th Street in rehabbing all of those old grand houses. So I believe there's a lot of stuff happening in that neighborhood that is going to sort of propel it to a much better space for the people that are living in it.
Yeah, I think the important thing is, and we work in economic development down in Corey, not in the same capacity as our West Bayfront, but that there is an organization and a centralization of the direction and how that all comes together. So that's great to hear, and you can see it as time goes along.
Yeah,
Yes.
There's a philosophy of Main Street that the state has taken on years ago, and now they've talked more and more about Side Street, and it's a real credit to you, Karen, around your reinvestment in the same neighborhood to get those side streets thriving to support the main streets and vice versa.
The great thing. Go ahead, Karen. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, I mean, I was just going to say, I hope that the project that I'm going to be working on next will be something that will be a catalyst to get everybody else really excited about doing something productive and progressive in that neighborhood.
The great thing the great thing we have going on right now is that from a government level, we haven't always had great support in that space to get these kind of things done. The new governor, Josh Shapiro, is putting a focus on it. Main Street Matters is coming soon. The Main Street program that they put together, and he's looking at it at a 10-year cycle. So that's exciting. I got the 1 minute to go, Karen, and we're going to news at the bottom half of the hour.
That was so fast.
It was, and it was a great conversation. I appreciate you coming on. One plug: where can people find you, and on the website or in general, where can they find your stuff?
Well, they can find it at the restaurant at Pineapple Eddie Southern Bistro. We still do have a website. I do not have a website yet for my new project, but that is coming soon. And as soon as all of that is up and running, I'm sure that you will find out. But in the meantime, Pineapple Eddie Southern Bistro is the place that things can be found.
Thank you, Karen. Stick around after the news. We have Kara Haas, the owner of Tia Booksellers. See ya after the break. Welcome back to Community Chronicles Radio, brought to you weekly by Gannon University's Erie Technology Incubator, in partnership with the Corey Higher Education Council. The Erie Technology Incubator, located at 900 State Street, works in the entrepreneurial ecosystem and provides technical assistance through the entrepreneurial process. This show features members of this ecosystem and the entrepreneurs in the Erie area. This half hour, we are happy and excited to introduce our next guest, Kara Haas. Kara is the owner of Tia Booksellers, located in Northeast. Welcome to the show, Kara.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Do we have Steph?
Oh, here we go.
Hello?
Oh, there she is. Go ahead, Steph. You're up.
Oh, okay. I just couldn't hear Kara. But yeah, we'll start off by, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, and are you a native to this area?
Certainly. I was I was raised in Northeast, and I went away to school and got an undergrad in Spanish and International Affairs, and then realized you don't just go be the next diplomat to Mexico. So my family had a manufacturing business out in Northeast, and I came back and helped my dad. I learned accounting, took MBA classes at Gannon at night, and really enjoyed working with a local CPA. Went back and finished my master's degree in accounting, went on to get my CPA. And then I followed my parents to Florida, opened my own CPA firm. I've always had a love for retail, so I created a boutique firm that helped independent retailers soup to nuts with all their compliance, their point of sale, any type of things that they might have as challenges. And I serviced over 60 retailers with my firm doing that. I always knew I wanted to come back to Northeast to open a retail store. I just wasn't sure what that would be and when. So I came back to the area, and I worked in retail to kind of study the market, see what Northeast may need. I knew that just a general gift shop was not for me out in Northeast. But I really became involved with the book industry and studied that market and just saw what independent bookstores can do for a community in terms of creating space where everyone's welcome to kind of discover, learn things that they might be interested in, things they didn't know they were interested in, and kind of be a central point for people to gather.
It seems like it's hard to find a lot of like booksellers around lately too, and so that's awesome that you started this up in Northeast. Now, can you give us a little bit of background on the opening of the Tia Booksellers?
Certainly. So when I first came back, I had the opportunity from the chamber to start selling just in our park on Saturdays during our open market. It was a perfect way to start. It gave me a great opportunity to really understand my market and what people wanted and engage with the community. And then as the weather turned, some of my former contemporaries from school, they had a bike store and some empty space in it. And they offered me the opportunity to continue my momentum within their space over the winter months. And then one day I was walking by where I had my very first job, and I saw that the space was available for rent. And it was actually my very first boss who inspired me to go into retail. And he is now my landlord,
That's awesome.
which it's just been great to see this journey come full circle with that. We are located next to Skunk and Goat, and it's fantastic traffic. We are open 3 nights a week because quite a few people who come from Skunk and Goat over to us since we're right next door.
That's fantastic. So can I ask a question, Kara? So you had talked about going to the open market in Northeast, and it's such a great farmers market in the summertime, very inexpensive for vendors to do. But how did you feel about really, customer discovery is a lot of things that startups forget about. They think just because I have an idea, it's going to work. So you basically were using the farmers market, right, to gather what everybody was interested. How important was that in deciding what you might have wanted to be carrying or the location that you wanted to be in Northeast?
It's absolutely critical. And it's something sometimes I want to say I luck into some of these opportunities. Mm-hmm. Like, I wish I could say I had the foresight that this is how I was going to do it and it was part of my strategy. But I would highly recommend that not only you work in the industry that you want to open a business in and learn what it's like from ground up, mm-hmm. But to start at the farmers market, because I went into this as most people think as well, that I'm limited by my immediate geography and that my main customer base is going to be just the people of Northeast. Mm-hmm. And it gave me that opportunity to see, oh, absolutely not. It's not. That I certainly do have some phenomenal customers from Northeast, but we are a great destination community, mm-hmm. and we have so many visitors, and to be able to see how many people come for the open market, for WineFest, truly for some of our restaurants, that really did help me see that it's not just my immediate geographical area.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great location right by the Skunk and Go. Mm-hmm. And then you have all, like you were saying, about all the events that are happening, and that also has got to be a big help to you. The next question I have for you is this, is there a story behind how you named the store?
There is. So I was inspired by a book called The Small Mart Revolution by Michael Schumann. And in it, he talks about TINA, which is an acronym that stands for There Is No Alternative. And it was made popular in the 80s by Margaret Thatcher, actually, in reference to globalization, that our entire world would be moving toward the big box retail stores, and that would be our only source. So I take a play on that acronym and I remove the N and say there is always. So Tia, that's my primary inspiration for creating that name. And then I go forward with it that there is always an alternative, independent, and a story.
That's great.
Very cool. Yeah.
That is really great. And right now, I am immersed in a book called Your City is Sick by Jeff Siegler. He's kind of a local economic development guru. And he has posited the theory that those big box stores out where they sprawl are leading to basically the death of small communities. And it's important to get walkability. You talked about that. And the sense of ownership in the cities where people can mingle right through. And I just like how you said that, Tia, there is always. And cities don't necessarily need to lose that war. So what you're doing is very important.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would choose...
Now your webpage...
Sorry. No, go ahead.
I was just going to go into the next thing that I had. Your webpage indicates that you're an advocate for investigative journalists, whistleblowers, imprisoned authors, and emerging voices. Now, how will you help all these people have a platform?
So a lot of that comes from my background as a CPA, and I'm an auditor by trade, and it still is actually my primary source of income is the accounting industry. And during my time as an auditor and an observer of various markets, I really had an opportunity to be exposed to investigative journalists and one individual who went to my college and graduated, he was killed by ISIS terrorists. And he was an investigative journalist, James Foley. And actually his mother, Diane, wrote a book that was published, I believe this year actually, called American Mother. And it tells her story. And she had the opportunity to confront his killer. And so that's obviously quite rare. But that any type of books that do cover investigative journalists, ones who might be lesser known, I tend to carry some of those books and just start to create an awareness. And that's what's helped me is realizing how much awareness needs to be created. Because we often are so captured by our immediate crisis that we have, and worried about creating offense or taking offense, and we become outraged by things, and then we're not open to seeing that there are certain people who truly are imprisoned for what they write, and trying to create that awareness. And it shifted a bit too for me, because I didn't realize how many people aren't aware of what Amazon owns and how far Amazon's reach is. Most people, and that people don't realize I'm not related to Amazon. Amazon doesn't help me. Goodreads actually does not help me. Amazon owns Goodreads. Amazon owns Audible. And so really I've had to take that step back and just make sure that people are aware that there are platforms that are alternatives to Amazon. Libro FM, there are indie alternative to Amazon's Audible. And people can support Werner, Pressed, My Bookshop, any bookshop that's independent through Libro FM. They exist solely for the purpose of helping independent booksellers. And conversely, in print, bookshop.org, they exist solely for helping independent booksellers sell books online. So if someone buys a book through bookshop.org, they can nominate their local bookshop as the recipient of those proceeds. So it is as if you're buying from our store.
So are there certain books that, like I say, I'm sure there is, that Amazon, of course, they have control over all that they don't sell correctly, that you would sell possibly? Like somebody couldn't find a book and say, oh, I looked on Amazon, I couldn't find it. And do you carry that where Amazon doesn't? I was just thinking about that.
On occasion, it's more the opposite of that. There will be some books that Amazon has that we don't.
Oh, okay.
And they're very rare. But the problem is Amazon makes everyone a writer. Amazon makes publishing very easy. Okay. And so we tend to we probably will have the best sellers, the more recent, and a better pulse. As booksellers, we have a better pulse on whether it's actually good literature or going to address what you're really looking for, where Amazon's algorithms don't have that. And Amazon, they tap into, well, I wonder if you can buy this book on Amazon. It's called The Art of Everything. And it is by the investigative journalist, the Wall Street Reporter, who covered Amazon from birth through now. And that read really is what opened my eyes to just how manipulative they are. and how they put their technology to use. And they market it as helping small businesses, and really they're just getting all the information they can to introduce their own white label product.
Interesting. And so like Amazon makes it, like you said, just so easy. And there's a lack of kind of a rigor to it. Like, okay, you can be on our marketplace. What you're selling may be false information. It may be things that, people use for confirmation bias. They believe certain things, and they can look up immediately on Amazon and find information that does support what they think they know.
Correct.
Right. Interesting.
Now I'm looking at your website, and I love how it's set up. It's very colorful, and how you have like the little reviews of the books. And now, did you design that or develop it, or did you have someone else develop it, or?
So I'm a little bit like my accounting, my point of sale and e-commerce platforms. I'm kind of like shoemaker's children in this situation. So I did design TiaBookseller.com, honestly using plug and play from GoDaddy. GoDaddy is truly my platform there. As I end up sitting here preaching about no big box. I suppose they are the dominant force. And then for my point of sale, I use Shopify. Mm-hmm. And of course, their primary product is e-commerce. I'm working toward blending the two sites so that I just have the one domain, but I'm not quite ready to give up that original design that I have on TiaBookseller.com.
Yeah, I like that. So, and then going to my next question, yes, how can we find you? I know you just said it, but is that the only place, or is there another place that they can find you, or is it you're mainly on online, or do you have like Facebook as well?
So we are active on Facebook and Instagram, and our handle for both is Tia Bookseller. We are singular, not plural. It's easy to often add an S there. And then, of course, our website, TiaBookseller.com. We do immediately redirect to anything that we sell in Shopify right from the main site.
Can you order now? Do you sell online as well, or is it just mainly out of the bookstore that you have?
Yes, so that tends to be the most confusing. So you can buy through us on bookshop.org if you require shipping. We are currently testing with Geneva Rose, her special collector edition, The Perfect Marriage. We have signed copies of those, the release date of that being November 26th. So we are currently testing with that one book, being able to order direct from us. And then from there, we will have it where you can buy online and pick up in store. It's actually available right now, but we just haven't marketed it.
I have a question for you, Tia. So,
Kara.
I love shopping local. If I'm going to go to a restaurant, I'd rather go local. So my biggest day of the year is not Black Friday. It's Small Business Saturday. So do you have any plans that you want to tell our listeners about what you're going to do for that day?
Absolutely. So we are a sponsor of AMIBO, which is the American Independent Business Alliance. Okay. And they help us with the American Bookseller Association create indie alternatives to Black Friday. We have Plaid Friday. So we kick off with first Geneva Rose. We're having a release party in the morning at the Bean, which is our local coffee shop. Mm-hmm. So we're doing that on that Tuesday from 7 to 9. Then Plaid Friday is the indie answer to Black Friday. Okay. And we'll have special savings, especially if you wear plaid. And then Small Business Saturday, all the merchants of Northeast get together. And later that evening in Northeast, they have a big tree lighting ceremony. They have a bonfire, all kinds of good stuff. And it carries on to artists on Sunday. Cider Monday is the indie alternative.
Cider.
And then Giving Tuesday, which encourages giving back and any donations to nonprofits.
That's great.
That is great. Yeah. That is great. So a couple of thoughts that I have, and I see on your website you have best books for young readers.
Yeah.
And I'm flipping through that. And I think back, and I think my mom would agree with this, is that when I was a younger kid, one of the great nights of the week was when we would go to the library. And for me, it was like huge and exciting. I know kids today don't think in the same terms. They probably get their books online or on in like an e-reader. But for me, that was very formative. And I believe very strongly that, a lot of the intelligence I was able to acquire throughout years of studying and everything began very early with reading books. So this is exciting, and I see it's broken out into age categories. And this is a publication, right? This is a independent?
Yes, it is an independent publication that the American Bookseller Association provides for us. And then also we just started in November, December with our first issue. We put out a 12-page newspaper with new releases for this quarter for every genre as well.
That is so great. That's so great. And everything that's going on in Northeast, what you just talked about with, combating the big box and the online stores that are out there, it's supported by some of the research that I'm reading now. So it's exciting. I think Northeast is doing a great job. That's exciting and good to hear.
Yeah, absolutely.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
So the next question is it primarily people who are looking for like a tangible hard copy, or do you get a lot more people logging through and getting their books that way on what was it?
It's mostly people coming in, although we have seen quite an increase in interest in Libro, and me chatting with customers who might be adverse to listening, that they'd rather read. Libro's helped me increase their openness to possibly, I tell people I listen when I'm doing food prep, when I'm cleaning.
Driving, yeah.
Yes, it's not just for driving, and that there are ways, and honestly, because of Libro FM, it is the only reason I've been able to read as much as I have, because I simply just don't have the time to read the tangible book.
That's great. So what else we have here?
I'm gonna have to write that down.
Oh yes, for sure. I will make sure. I will make sure that you leave with every QR code and information on them for sure.
Now, what hours are you open? I know I see it on your website, but for those listening, what days and hours are you open?
Yes, we are open Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday from 10 to 5, and Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, 10 to 8. And we're at 15 West Main Street, which is right next to Skunk and Goat.
So I have another question based on your website, and I like Steph. I really like your website. I'm gonna read this article about Amazon and what that costs you. That looks interesting. But you have on here financial crime picks, and it I can see what's on here, but tell our audience why you have that specifically highlighted on your page.
So the financial crime picks, being an auditor, I've always been fascinated by financial crime. And in fact, that's kind of how I built a bit of a niche market for myself. When I didn't have customers as a CPA, I went back to my office and sat in front of point of sale equipment and accounting software and said, if I wanted to steal, how am I going to do this? So I kind of learned via an act as if, but then I started just to become really focused on prevention and detection. So a lot of my ones, swindlers and cons, if I was ever going to write a book, it was it would be about the woman who predated Charles Ponzi. She was in 1880, and her name was Sarah Howe, and she had the exact same scheme that Charles Ponzi had. So even in crime, women did not get the.
And it's not named after her.
Right.
It's
exactly.
a Ponzi scheme.
It
everybody.
should have been a house scheme.
Oh,
yes.
Couldn't get the credit.
Yes.
Well, Kara, this has been a great conversation. I've really enjoyed hearing about your bookstore and how that process came to be and how well researched and everything was. It's impressive. So thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It was wonderful to be here.
So, it goes so fast, and there's so much more I'd like to learn, and we'll make the drive out to see you soon.
Sounds good.
So, Steph,
Absolutely.
we haven't done this in a while. We have a couple of minutes, maybe one. Can you talk about a couple of the classes coming up soon that people might be interested in?
Sure. I just got to get to the right site here. I'm like, yeah,
you're out of practice.
I know, I'm out of practice, and I've got like all this stuff. I know I've been working on some really cool stuff that's coming up for next year, even into January. And I know Kathy was just talking about the homeowners class that she went to last night. She was talking about electrical basics. We've still got some more of those classes coming up. We got the
November 1 minute
14th.
sign. So just one class, and then we'll get the dad joke and we'll head out of here.
All right. Well, just talk about the master homeowner. Those classes is $20 a piece. So November 14th, that next one will be about home and neighborhood safety. And we've also got, so you want to be a beekeeper. That's also November 18th. That looks really neat. That's only $10. So make sure you go to www.coreyhyatt.org and sign up for some awesome classes.
With about 30 seconds, we'll hit the dad joke, brought to you by Corey Higher Education Council. A book fell on my head. I can only blame my shelf. Stick around for the Economic Pulse with Lath. Tina has the week off. We will see you next week.